And when free speech dies, it's not long before free thought dies, and then creativity, and then invention and innovation, all of them strangled. And that is why autocratic regimes of the sort I've been describing become famous, not merely for their authoritarian tendencies, but for their total stupidity. You don't see people turning to North Korea, Myanmar, or Zimbabwe for new ideas and innovations. Regimes and organizations that follow this route are not headed for excellence. No, they're on the fast track toward decline and failure. And how much discipline, how much policing, how much repression are necessary to eliminate free speech and legitimate self-government are the benchmarks for how quickly the decline will unfold. I love that word, benchmarks. One of the most insidious varieties of autocratic rule involves the use of informers in everyday life. In the Soviet Union, for example, children were urged to inform on their parents and students to rat on their professors if they heard them discussing forbidden issues in the home or the classroom. The most gruesome picture of this is provided in the great book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, The Gulag Archipelago. He wrote, "It's difficult to school oneself, to ask that constant question, who is the stool pigeon among us? In our apartment, in our courtyard, in our watch repair shop, in our school, in our design bureau. It is difficult to school oneself, and it is repulsive to become schooled. But for safety, one must." And Solzhenitsyn was himself imprisoned in the Gulag for 8 years, and then held in internal exile. And I believe he was charged with the crime of unprofessional conduct. I'd have to check the facts on that. In a later case in the Soviet Union, a noted physicist of all things, ran into some trouble. To paraphrase a message given to him by the state, "You're welcome to do your research and your science. But when it comes to criticizing great leader or finding fault with our glorious regime, just watch out, Dr. Sakharov." In 1980, after protesting the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, Sakharov, probably the most brilliant scientist of his generation, was forced into internal exile in the closed city of Gorky. And as I recall, he was charged with the crime of unprofessional conduct. It might have been something else. In his famous study of the German people following World War II, the American social critic Milton Mayer found that many of the people he interviewed scarcely noticed that their society had been taken over by a brutal totalitarian ruler. They were contented. They went about their lives. They did their work. They did their research. They enjoyed their families. And yes, they noticed that the synagogue had burned down and that their Jewish neighbors had moved away, but they remained silent, and life was good. They had a great leader, and the leader had a plan. Everything seemed wonderful. Everything seemed just fine until that horrible war broke out. The title of Milton Mayer's book, as you can see, is "They Thought They Were Free." Now, I will not continue with this list of benchmarks of autocratic governance. For the specifics, you can read books on modern political history or consult your local listings. And I will not have time to discuss specific strategies for change. But I'd like to conclude with 2 points of recognition that may be helpful in efforts to restore democracy. first point might be called the Niemöller principle. It stems from the life of Martin Niemöller, a Protestant pastor in Germany who supported Hitler in the early years of the Nazis' rise to power, but later came to see what was going wrong and protested. And he was imprisoned in Sachsenhausen concentration. There's his